Canton, Massachusetts is a small town where it seems everyone knows each other. There's a small classic downtown area featuring places to eat, shop, and socialize. And on Friday, January 28th, 2022, some of the locals were gathering at two of the local bars, C.F. McCarthy's and across the street at the Waterfall Bar and Grill. Boston police officer John O'Keefe met some buddies at C.F. McCarthy's early in the evening and then was joined by his girlfriend Karen Reed. Then they went across the street to the Waterfall to see some more friends, including John's old neighbors, Chris and Julie Albert. Chris owns the local downtown pizzeria and had been texting with John. When midnight arrived, the Waterfall was closing. So a group of folks from the Waterfall headed to Chris's brother's house, Brian Albert. But Chris and Julie did not go. When Karen and John arrived in front of Brian Albert's home, John exited Karen's SUV. At this point, what happens next is disputed. Prosecutors say John was murdered by Karen, who backed over him with her SUV, while the defense says John was ambushed inside the Alberts' home and put on the lawn to die and to frame Karen. Karen is on trial for murder, and now crucial testimony in the case as prosecutors bring in their expert to do an accident reconstruction to try to prove their case. Meanwhile, the judge is dealing with some jury drama resulting in a juror being sent home. We have the latest tonight as we continue to investigate the tragic death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. This was another significant day in the trial of Karen Reed, and on several different fronts. We're going to get to it this hour. But let's begin with the Google search. The infamous Google search. How long to die in cold? This is the search that the defense alleges Jennifer McCabe, who is at the party that night connected to people, did at 2:27 a.m. before John O'Keefe is ever found dead in the cold on the front yard of Brian Albert's home. There's no reasonable explanation for that other than someone in the house had something to do with John O'Keefe's death, if you believe the search was done at 2:27. And when this case began and when we were first covering this case, and the first time I spoke with the defense team, they were adamant. They were absolutely convinced. There's no question, and I asked them, there's no question that this search was done at 2:27. And it has only one logical, reasonable conclusion you can draw from that, which would be Karen Reed is not guilty. That's how important this search, how long to die in cold, is. So the question tonight is, Alan Jackson, Karen Reed, the defense, could they be wrong? Could they have gotten this wrong? Could they have read the data wrong? Could their expert have given them wrong information? Think about this for a second. That the beginnings of this whole conspiracy, the foundation was built on this Google search. It absolutely was. It has grown since then, but this is the foundation. So the question is, could they be wrong? And if Jennifer McCabe didn't do this search, does that equal no conspiracy? Like, is this the foundation of the conspiracy? And if the foundation's no good, the whole thing comes tumbling down. I think that's a legitimate question to ask, especially in light of some of the testimony that happened today that we're going to talk about tonight. But it's not necessarily what I think about it, you think about it, or anyone else. It's, what about the jury? What are they going to think about it? And how does it impact the way they see all the other evidence in this case? Let's bring in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, joining us live tonight from outside the courthouse in Dedham, Massachusetts. Matt, this is such an important piece of evidence, but let's start talking about that jury, right? This jury is the one that will make the decision, and today, some jury drama in Dedham.
Vinnie, good evening. Nice to see you. So there was a lot of jury drama here in Dedham at the courthouse here behind me. There were 4 jurors that were questioned by the judge, all of the attorneys present. The first juror, well, she had to keep going back up to the judge and answer more questions between the other 3 women. At the end of the day, I noticed that the judge told her, "Thank you for your time." The juror threw up her hands and then she walked out the door. When the 15 remaining jurors came into the room, sat in the box, the judge told them basically that it was a personal issue and not to worry about it, and the day moved on. Now, coincidentally, this was also the juror that was accidentally shown on camera when the court failed to tell the camera operator that a juror was going to be questioned at the start of the day and walk behind defendant Karen Reed today. So outside the courthouse, here's what defense attorney Alan Jackson said about the second juror this week being dismissed. Take a listen. Reaction from today, Karen?
Frustrating.
What was frustrating?
Why was the juror dismissed?
Why was I can't talk about it.
You can't at all?
No, of course not. No, that's jury stuff, and that's sort of, I don't mean to be cryptic, but it's off limits. I can't talk about it.
Do you still feel good about having 15?
Oh, I feel great. Yeah. Yeah, the 15 jurors, the 15, the 16, the 17, they were all great. But, sometimes these, it's a 7-8 week trial that life gets in the way. So we're not worried about it in the least. It doesn't change anything. As the judge said, we just move on, and that's why we have extra jurors.
6 men, 9 women, 15 total in the box hearing the case. Today being day 25, wrapping up week 7 for this jury, and we have quite a bit to go, Vinnie.
Yeah, it happens in a lot of trials. I mean, when I was trying cases that were clearly not of this magnitude and not of this length, you lose jurors. That's why you have alternates. But what I found most fascinating is that they brought in more than one and spoke to more than one, but only dismissed one of them, which tells me that something happened in the jury room. And we'll leave it at that for now. Let's get to how I opened the show, talking about the Google search, and that was front and center today. Such a significant piece of evidence for the jury, for the defense, gave birth to the Free Karen Reed movement. What happened today?
House long to die in the cold back in the headlines today, and this was the very first time that we've heard an expert testify and talk about it to this jury. There's the Cellbrite information that this jury has already seen. Well, the state's witness, the state's analyst of the cell phones, she says that the search wasn't deleted. It didn't happen at 2:27 in the morning, that in fact it was a tab that was open. The search was done after John O'Keefe's body was found. And at the request of Karen Reed, the search made by Jenn McCabe. Take a listen to this testimony.
It is a search for the term HOS, long to die in cold. My conclusion is that there was a search at 02:47 a.m. for Mock Sports. That browser was in use, and there were continual searches due through the night. The phone was, I do agree with Mr. Green's findings that the phone was in use at that time at 02:27. Later, the phone a web search is done at 6:23 a.m. For how long, at that moment, Apple produces a suggestion for how long to digest food. The search is instead completed with how long TI die in CKLD at 6:23. A new search is conducted at 6:24 of HOS, long to die in cold, Hos, long to die in cold. That search is then the last search that is made in that particular tab.
As a matter of fact, she said, the last thing she said was she's not saying that it didn't happen at 2:27 a.m. She's saying she's been able to engineer a circumstance in which she could show that it could happen at a different time. But she's not saying it didn't happen at 2:27. As a matter of fact, Occam's razor suggests that's exactly when it happened. So no, it's not out the window at all. It still happened at 2:27.
And this is the beginning of the expert testimony on this key piece of evidence. This one's going to be a battle of the experts, because the defense tells us for certain they're going to call their own expert that's going to interpret it as it was deleted, and they do say that it happened at 2:27 in the morning.
Jury's got to figure this out. This is huge. The jury has to, because if the jury believes that it was 2:27, Karen Reed will be walking out of that courtroom. I mean, there's no other reasonable conclusion you can draw from it, but this expert saying otherwise, Alan Jackson interpreting it otherwise. We'll talk about that later in the show, but a big witness, a big issue in this case. Another big issue in this case was the accident reconstruction expert who was a trooper, right?
Trooper Joe Paul with Massachusetts State Police. He interviewed and investigated more than 190 crashes in this state. He's a crash reconstructionist on that team, and he documented where all of the evidence was found in relation to John O'Keefe's body at 34 Fairview. And he also made a statement to the jury saying that the injuries on his body and where the evidence was located is consistent with a pedestrian strike. Listen to this.
There's a point in there where it appears to be consistent with a pedestrian strike.
And why is it that your interpretation of that data you feel is consistent with the pedestrian strike?
It's the sudden change of speed at 24.2 to 23.6 in a half second, while the accelerator pedal is still at a consistent 74%. And also the steering wheel angle goes left at 4.5 degrees and also goes right to 4.5 degrees and then goes back to left after that. So right at that spot is something that's consistent with a pedestrian strike.
As far as the injuries that you were informed by the medical examiner that Mr. O'Keefe had sustained,
yes.
What, if any, relationship did those injuries have in relation to a pedestrian collision?
They are consistent with a pedestrian collision.
And how so?
Due to, we can break down each injury to the arm, the lacerations of the arm from the tail light, the dent where the scratches for his hand could be. Those are something that would be consistent with this, in this particular case, with striking the Lexus.
And when the car, the alleged murder weapon and all of this, was being housed over at Canton PD, that's a shot of this where they were testing the car, throwing it in reverse, testing the brakes. They said the brakes worked properly. They said the backup cameras were working properly. And then he also put up on the screen after these tests and said that he logged triggering events that were in the matrix of the car and that were logged by the car, and one was 24.2 miles per hour. That was a big moment. But the defense outside the courthouse says it's all being misinterpreted. Take a listen.
Yeah, cars can go backward 24 miles an hour. That's not the point. He's misread almost every single bit of the data, and that's going to come out on Monday. We'll see.
That's right. Testimony resumes Monday morning, and this trooper is going to be back on the stand and under cross.
An important cross-examination, an extremely important one. You've got two fronts now where we've got battles of experts here, and it comes down to credibility and how they withstand cross-examination. Big day, big week. You need to rest up this weekend, Matt. We've got another big week coming up next week, so please do that. Matt Johnson, in the middle of it all in Dedham, Massachusetts. Let's bring in our trial insiders to take a look at this jury issue first. Joining us tonight, Karen Reed supporter, creator of Justice for Officer John O'Keefe and Karen Reed Facebook page, Nick Rocco. Also with us, criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr. and the YouTuber behind Yellow Cottage Tales, Kevin Lenahan. Great to see everyone tonight. We've got a lot to talk about, but right here, right now, I want to narrow and limit it to this jury drama that took place today. And the one thing, you know, a quick message from the judge about what it was. Alan Jackson not making public what's going on with this jury. But there were several jurors that were questioned. So I'm just going to go to Joseph first because he's been practicing law for quite some time. Does that tell you anything if you've got more than one juror? Because what it's telling me is that something happened, like in the jury room, or amongst the jurors, and a series of them had to be questioned to make sure that they could continue deliberating or continue hearing this case and sitting in this case, but one of them's gone, so something happened.
No, this is not unusual at all. That's why you sit 14 or 16. In this case, I think they sat 18 jurors. What that tells me is one of the jurors was probably exposed to extraneous information and all that Judge Cannoni is doing by bringing in the other 3 jurors, they are probably jurors that were in close proximity to that juror, and they just want to make sure the jury pool in its entirety was not tainted by whatever that juror was exposed to. They just want to make sure that this case is tried within the 4 walls of that courtroom. So this is not unusual. I know coincidentally that juror was also inadvertently caught on camera. And I know, especially with all of the social media pressure being put on just about everyone that touches this case, the court is going out of its way to make sure that the jurors are not captured on camera and video. So I think this is just a slight hiccup. I think that really there was so much more today to talk about. At least we're not talking about Colin Albert's knuckles tonight.
No, not tonight. But the trial's still not over.
Thank you.
We may revisit that. And just to clarify about the camera, like the jury comes in and out of the courtroom a certain place. You know, everyone's informed, the camera goes up. That's why you see the fans spinning around sometimes. This juror just ends up walking right behind Karen Read unexpectedly to like everyone, including whoever's manning the camera at that moment. Okay, Nick, your thoughts about the jury drama, something that has accompanied it. Anyone reading social media, there's like rumors left, right, and center, but it was clear that Alan Jackson is saying nothing about this publicly.
Yeah, it's drama for a reason, right? It's just more drama into this case. Personally, I'm not really looking too much into it. It could have been something personal, like the first juror that ended up having to be removed. That was more of a personal issue. So, I mean, for me to sit here and say exactly what it is, it would just be speculation at this point. So, the judge decided that she needed to be removed, and that's what it is. And we're going to continue on with this trial with the remaining jury that we have.
Yeah, Kevin, as we're watching all this develop in the morning, there's a lot of questions, right? Because you had everything going on, and all of a sudden, there's like blackness. So the only people who know what's going on are the people inside the courtroom. And you have millions of people watching this around the country and around the world. So there's tons of speculation about what's going on. At the end of the day, I think everyone's right here that it's not going to impact anything, because whatever issue this juror had, this juror will not be deciding the case.
I agree with Nick that we probably shouldn't speculate without any more definitive evidence about what happened here, but it is worth pointing out this is a very unique trial. This is a trial where the defense has very consciously enlisted social media to try to whip up a public frenzy, and they began that with a blogger, Turtle Boy, who covers the case in court now, and who has pretty much bragged that he's trying to influence the jurors. So this is a very unusual case. We'll see if there's any connection there. Turtle Boy was not in court today. So I don't know. We'll see. It's going to get weirder.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying, but I don't think it's clear one way or the other what is going on here. It could have been something that happened in a jury room. It could have something that happened last night. She could have heard what the governor said about the trooper. I mean, it could have been any number of things that could have influenced it. So I think we're right that we don't speculate. The trial moves on. Joseph Krowski is very comfortable with the jury moving forward, so I'm comfortable with this jury moving forward, correct? Okay. So our insiders stay with us. When we come back, they'll start yelling at each other as we start talking about the evidence, and we're going to get right into that Hos long to die in the cold Google search. Plus, coming up next hour.
A 2-year-old girl is reported missing by her mom when her dad doesn't show up for a scheduled drop-off exchange. Then, an international manhunt is started for the girl's dad while the search continues for little Soraya. And now, tonight, another major twist in the case that could turn it upside down.
is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Reed claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious.
After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The killer or cover-up murder trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
See this first search that says Hos long to die in cold?
I do.
What's that time?
You've got the, it's right over at 2:27
AM or PM?
a.m.
Ms. McCabe, you made that search at 2:27 a.m. because you knew that John O'Keefe was outside in your sister's lawn dying in the cold, didn't you?
Absolutely not.
She denied it. Jennifer McCabe denies making that search at 2:27. If she did, again, this is it for Karen Reed. But this is the foundation of the entire conspiracy, and I think gave birth to the Free Karen Reed movement. So this is coming down to now expert testimony. And today, the thing with experts is it's not just what they say, it's how they say it and who they are. And the jury has to evaluate all of that. So here's Jessica Hyde, digital forensics expert, testifying for the state about that search and about what time that search was made.
It is a search for the term HOS, long to die in cold. My conclusion is that there was a search at 02:47 a.m. for Mock Sports. That browser was in use, and there were continual searches due through the night. The phone was, I do agree with Mr. Green's findings that the phone was in use at that time at 02:27. Later, the phone a web search is done at 6:23 a.m. For how long, at that moment, Apple produces a suggestion for how long to digest food. The search is instead completed with how long TI die in CKLD at 6:23. A new search is conducted at 6:24 of HOS, long to die in cold, Hos long to die in cold. That search is then the last search that is made in that particular tab.
Would you agree with me that another simple explanation for that 2:27 a.m. timestamp was that the user of that iPhone conducted that search at or before 2:27 a.m. on January 29th of 2022?
That timestamp is not indicative of a time of search. So the question is difficult to answer because I can't say that that timestamp tells me anything about the time of search.
All right, Nick Rocco, you're listening to that. You're part of the Free Karen Reed, Justice for John O'Keefe, Justice Free Karen Reed movement. What did you hear from that expert as she testified?
So I'll be honest with you. I feel like I walked away having more questions than I had answers from her, just in the aspect of the tabs are being closed. That's not actually the time of the search. She Googled it at 6:23. And again, like I said before, right, I'm not a forensic data expert. I actually did listen to her with an open mind, even though I still believe that the Google search happened at 2:27. It was a lot to take in from her personally, and I believe that ultimately, like we said before, it's going to be a battle of the experts. You're going to have two from the prosecution, two from the state, and it's going to come down to what the jury believes and who they find to be more credible. So as far as Jessica Hyde, and they have Ian Whiffen from Celebrite, I think Ian might hold a little bit more credibility just because he's from the company Celebrite. But then also you have Richard Green coming in, and then one of the FBI experts that are going to testify to how this did happen. So I find it very interesting when you're analyzing data that one person can come to the conclusion of it didn't happen, and then you have someone else who can come to the conclusion of how it did happen, all just depending on how they're really looking at the data. So I think that's how the jury's going to have to look at this. How do they see this?
Kevin, what did you hear from this expert today?
I think this search is not only wrong, but it's unusually cruel. And what it's done, and it teaches us to never give your phone over to the police, no matter what, no matter how innocent you are. But one thing we learned new today, at 6:22 and 49 seconds, there was a search category as Jen was typing in how long to. What Apple does is it tries to anticipate what your search is going to be, and it formed this anticipation of how long to digest food, and that wasn't at all what she was typing in. But what that told, according to Jessica Hyde, what that told us is that had there been an older search, a more recent search for how long to die in the cold in there, the program would have anticipated that that's what she was trying to search again, and it would have put that in instead of how long to digest food. So that shows that no earlier search was made. She explained that under Lally. Unfortunately, under the cross, she maybe forgot it or didn't have a chance to explain it as well. But to me, and just one other thing to keep in mind, on the ambulance, Karen told the paramedic, asked the paramedic that same question. So this is what she asked Jen inside the cruiser too.
Let me ask you, Joseph, is this search the whole case? Like, does if the jury believes that the search is done at 6:23, does the entire conspiracy theory of the case crumble with it if they believe it's at 6:23?
Absolutely. It very well may be that Karen Reed's biggest victim, of course, was John O'Keefe, but Karen Reed's second biggest victim is Jennifer McCabe. You could tell, look, Jessica Hyde is very credentialed, and the Free Karen Reed movement likes to tout experts from the feds. Jessica Hyde has done work with the defense community, with the intelligence community, and David Yannetti, a very well-respected lawyer, didn't lay a glove on her. It almost seems to me that David Yannetti's heart is not fully into the conspiracy theory. That this is really something that was manufactured by Alan Jackson, and it seems that him and Karen Reed are more involved in this. But Karen Reed has to know that Alan Jackson's going to get onto a plane and fly into the sunset in 2 weeks. If you really think about it from a common sense perspective, do you think Jennifer McCabe is going to go home at 2:27 in the morning and do a search about her daughter's basketball program, and that is the Hockomock program, that's in my county, and then right after that say, oh, by the way, my good friend John O'Keefe is bleeding out on the front lawn of 34 Fairview. I should check how long that's going to take. What makes sense from a common sense perspective? She's at the scene. Karen Reed is frantic. Karen Reed, the same person that's called 53 times to John O'Keefe's phone and to her father's phone, is saying how long to die in the cold. By the way, why do you call your father? You don't call your father if you think your boyfriend's cheating on you. You call your father because you know you're in trouble and you're looking for help. Jenn McCabe is an enormous victim. I still don't excuse some of the shortcomings of Trooper Proctor, but today was a day of reckoning for Jenn McCabe. And again, Jessica Hyde, she went through it in detail, and I'm glad that Nick had kind of a tepid response. She subjected her scrutiny of this software to 5 different software programs. All of them came up with the same conclusion. The search was at 6:23 and 6:24 in the morning. Backed by forensics, backed by common sense. Alan Jackson has overtried the conspiracy theory. Today was a devastating day for the defense.
Let me ask you this, Nick. How important, from your perspective, in believing that Karen Reed is innocent, is this Google search?
Well, this Google search does not really provide any evidence that Karen Reed hit John. So personally, if like I said, I believe this Google search happened, but let's just say it didn't happen. That proves that Jen didn't Google this. That doesn't prove Karen killed John. There is more than enough reasonable doubt in this case, aside from the Google search, that is going to let Karen Reed walk away from this a free woman. I mean, you have the videos missing. You have the inverted video. You have no one searching the home. No other suspects. You have solo cups. You have leaf blowers. I mean, the list goes on of things that were done horribly in this case, aside from the Google search. So I don't believe that whether this Google search, because here's the thing, their experts are going to say it didn't happen. Her experts are going to say it did happen. So are we really going to have a real answer? It's going to be up to the jury to decide what they believe happened.
Yeah.
Vinnie,
Vinnie. Go ahead.
They've had billboards, T-shirts, trucks, everything with "Hus long to die in the cold." They have staked a claim to this issue. And this is a huge issue because if the jury doesn't buy that was at 2:20, whatever, in the morning, then they're going to look at the other conspiracy type theories with a certain degree of skepticism.
Kevin, something that I'm noticing, though, social media, court TV groups that chat, overwhelmingly in 90% of the trials, it's 90% the defendant is guilty. There's always some folks who look at something else. This case is different. This one is tilting in the other direction. Is there more to this than the Google search, whether they believe it or don't believe it, that the damage done perhaps by Trooper Proctor and other issues here could be enough to convince the folks in Norfolk County that there's not enough to convict her on?
I think the whole thing was very well played. The entire defense conspiracy theory came out intact on April 18th on Turtle Boy's blog, and Karen herself played a big hand in putting that together and searching social media to get the information, to find the picture of Colin with the abrasions on his knuckles and a lot of other things. She's played a daily direct hand in trying to manufacture the social media attack on this. She has numerous allies, including Nick, who are out there pushing stuff for. And
so is what you're saying?
She's
is what you're saying? I'm running out of time, but is what you're saying that in this particular case, you think that the folks who are opining about this on social media might be a little more skewed than the other trials that we have here on Court TV?
Yeah, and we're going to see it again. And these things become a matter of belief, they know, and to a point where evidence doesn't matter anymore.
All right. Everyone's going to stay with us. When we come back, more important evidence, more experts, accident reconstructionists testifying for the state. Did he get the job done?
So from this data, this vehicle is backing up in the manner of about 5 seconds or so in a fairly straight line and achieves a maximum speed of 24.2 miles per hour, correct?
Correct.
And as far as the total distance traveled from the 0 to the 23.6 at the end, what was the total distance there?
97.35 feet.
And with respect to the vehicle's maximum speed, as far as 24.2 miles per hour that's recorded within this data set, how much distance had the vehicle traveled prior to achieving that 24.2 mile per hour?
62.51 feet.
Okay, this is the expert. Remember what I said about experts? You know, what they say, how they say it, and who they are. All significant in analyzing and judging their credibility, because it's going to be a battle of the experts. Here's Trooper Joe Paul from the Massachusetts State Police testifying about what he uncovered in reconstructing this what they're calling a murder.
There's a point there where it appears to be consistent with a pedestrian strike.
And why is it that your interpretation of that data you feel is consistent with the pedestrian strike?
It's the sudden change of speed, that 24.2 to 23.6 in a half second, while the accelerator pedal is still at a consistent 74%. And also the steering wheel angle goes left at 4.5 degrees and also goes right to 4.5 degrees and then goes back to left after that. So right at that spot is something that's consistent with a pedestrian strike.
As far as the injuries that you were informed by the medical examiner that Mr. O'Keefe had sustained,
yes.
What, if any, relationship did those injuries have in relation to a pedestrian collision?
They are consistent with a pedestrian collision.
And how so?
Due to, we can break down each injury, due to the arm, the lacerations of the arm from the tail light, the dent with the scratches for his hand could be. Those are something that would be consistent with this, in this particular case, with striking the Lexus. It's a forward projection crash with a side swipe. And what I mean by forward projection means that when a pedestrian gets struck by a vehicle, well, basically their principal impact forces are above the pedestrian's center of gravity, as in this case where you get the higher back of the vehicle. When you get struck by something like that, it projects you forward in the direction of the vehicle. And in this situation where he gets more struck through the side of the vehicle along the taillight area, that it projected him to forward and to the left due to the more of a side swipe manner.
Okay. Here's my analysis of this, and then Joseph, you could react to it. The problem I have with this expert for the state is that he looks like all the other troopers, right? It's like they're wearing the same haircut and uniform and way they are. So the perception for me is that they're all on the same team, kind of working together to put this together. I think that's a slight problem. He doesn't seem as experienced as some of the experts I've seen through the years. And the way this, like, experts are supposed to like teach the jury and bring them along. And I wasn't getting that. I'm not disputing his conclusions or his evidence, but to me, not the most persuasive and potential problems in an expert battle that he looks like he's an insider, like he is literally a state trooper. That's for you, Joseph.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you know, certainly they all go to the same barber and they all go to the same tailor. You know, most of them are the captain of the high school football team. They become state troopers, and here we are. But what might save him, and what does save him, is the event data recorder, right? The EDR. That doesn't lie, and that can't be manipulated. So irrespective of any shortcomings in his testimony, and by the way, some might not know this, but the state police are no fans of mine. But the event data recorder has her hitting the accelerator to a percentage of 73%. And it also documents the wheel on it turning. So that is clearly consistent with her backing up at a high rate of speed and striking someone. So, you know, there are areas that either Jackson or Yannetti are going to go after with maybe his ultimate conclusion, although it sounds pretty succinct to me. But the actual software is going to be tough to challenge. So I think that's going to be the saving grace here, because it really makes sense when you think about it. It's a 10-second event. It's supported by the event data recorder, and it's kind of consistent with probably what happened out front of Fairview.
Nick, is this concerning to you, 24.2 miles per hour for 62 feet? Number one, do you buy that? And is there another explanation for that? What do you think is going on here? Is she pressing down on the accelerator 73%?
So I'm not doubting that, you know, maybe she was pressing on the accelerator at 73%, but what I will say is this. There is a reason why he did not say the location of the area where she was backing up, because the defense is going to prove exactly where she actually backed up. And I will say it was not in front of 34 Fairview Road. So he's talking about being sideswiped by the vehicle, which caused those scratches on his arm. But the number one thing that I still cannot understand is when a 215-pound soft body hits a taillight, okay, how does it explode into 45 pieces? I've backed into a pole. Okay, I've hit my taillight and it cracks, it breaks, but there's not 45 pieces everywhere. And you're hitting a hard object. When you hit a soft object, maybe it would crack a taillight, but it's not like that picture. That was not caused by a body. I mean, that's not caused by a body.
Kevin?
The vehicle data matches up really well with the timeline indicated on John's phone. So John searched for 34 Fairview on his Waze to get them there, but Karen went past the turn onto the street and had to do a U-turn. And that's the first event that the Trooper Paul here talked about. Then, now that happens at 12:24. 8 minutes later, that's when the second incident occurs. And that's when she backs up, and and amazingly, it records the moment of impact from the steering wheel turning and the slight drop in speed. That happens 8 minutes later. at 12:32, which is exactly when John's phone last moves.
So,
Vinnie, can I just say something?
Sure.
As a defense attorney that does a lot of cases, motor vehicular homicides, event data recorders are really, really tough to challenge. Oftentimes we'll, enlist our own expert and we'll send the raw data to them that we get from the CARS team, which this trooper is part of. And it's really tough to challenge the actual raw data that's recorded in these boxes. So as talented as some of the lawyers are going to be and are, going to be tough to challenge the raw data. That's the problem for the defense here.
And what's the significance of the steering? What does that mean? And he said the sudden decrease in speed. How does that indicate murder versus potentially an accident here?
Well, that's
it's consistent with a pedestrian strike. I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
No, it's consistent with a pedestrian strike.
Kevin.
Go ahead, John. Okay, it's consistent with a pedestrian strike, and when you hit something, it's going to cause you just to turn the wheel just a little bit, and so what the trooper said was they've seen exactly that kind of comparable data signature with other pedestrian strikes.
Nick, what do you anticipate? Is this one where the defense is going to try to, or will be able to, undermine this trooper's credibility on cross, or more of a case where you would anticipate that it's their expert who's going to just but have a different story to tell based on the data?
Well, I know Joe doesn't like when I bring up the FBI experts, but they do have 3 FBI experts that are going to come in, all with PhDs, engineers that are going to prove why John wasn't hit by a vehicle. Like I said before, I'm going to look at, I looked at what Trooper Paul said today, and to be honest, I think having the trooper in front of his name is going to make the jury a little weary after hearing what Proctor did. So as far as like you were saying, being in the same camp and the same haircuts and all that, I think that might play a little role to the jury, not major, but again, this is going to be a battle of the experts. I personally didn't feel like Trooper Paul was very confident in the way he presented himself today. But like Joe had said, the data is data. It's just a matter of how it's read.
How it's read,
that's
how
going
it's
to come down to the
interpreted.
experts.
Absolutely. We're out of time for tonight. Nick Rocco, Joseph Krowski Jr., and Kevin Lenahan, thank you all so much. We'll see you again really soon.